Am I the only one who went through everything, a roller coaster, just to become a student midwife in the first place?
No, because I went through that exact same journey. And it's so interesting because it took so many peaks and valleys just to understand the pathway of midwifery, not even get into the pathway of midwifery.
Welcome back to the Midwifery Wisdom Podcast. This week, we have the pleasure of being joined by two guest hosts, Shiphrah and Susanna. They are both student midwives who are passionate about sharing their experiences on joining the pathway to midwifery and helping others who aspire to be midwives to join that pathway as well. Today, they share a bit about the roller coaster, as Shiphrah calls it, that is known as the pathway to midwifery. They share their own personal experiences in coming into midwifery, the different routes there are to take, tips for aspiring midwives, and a lot more. Both students and seasoned midwives, listen up. This episode has something for you. Let's dive in.
Hey, my name is Shiphrah. I am a student midwife, and I am on this platform to elevate the student midwife voice, to hear and to share stories, guidance, and essential conversations for the modern midwife.
Hey, peace and good day, y'all. I am Susanna, student midwife Sarai. I am here to shed that light to aspiring midwives and also to inspire those up-and-coming midwives that have not yet found the path of midwifery, to make sure we're able to educate and inform through our various experiences on our pathway to midwifery.
I love it. You inspire those who aspire to this pathway. That being said, am I the only one who went through everything, a roller coaster, just to become a student midwife in the first place?
No, because I went through that exact same journey. And it's so interesting because it took so many peaks and valleys just to understand the pathway of midwifery, not even get into the pathway of midwifery. So a little bit about my background. While I was searching to become a midwife on this whole birth worker entrance journey, the only avenue that I found was becoming a certified nurse midwife. And nothing against our CNMs, it's a great avenue, a great pathway also. However, I had my initial interest with direct entry midwifery. I looked up various regulations within the state, saying that you could be, in fact, an LM. There was licensure for CPM, but there was no concrete evidence of a 1, 2, 3 step of this is what you do, this is how you enroll, these are the schools you can go to. It was like scattered information. And that is what I feel like is the hardest thing. There was nobody there just giving a template as they had with the CNM route. So I am going the CPM route currently, certified professional midwife, which is the direct entry route. And yeah, I think they just need more access that's open, especially on the internet where there's everything there for the pathway for direct entry. So what was your experience like?
Okay. So similar, but there's so many more nuances to that. So I'll say this, my introduction to midwifery period was in the presence of elder grand midwives, traditional midwives, which means they did not take the CNM or CPM route. They was taught through the tradition from elder midwives in their community, and they've been doing this for decades. So first and foremost, introduction to midwife. I attended a home birth. It was my first birth ever with 2 elder midwives. So my only thing I knew initially was just being trained in the tradition, getting under the feet of women who've been doing this for a long time and just learn through observation, self-study, and eventually you're a midwife. But, modern midwife, we need a modern system where things are more structured to make it more accessible and able to be digested by today's students. And when you're dealing with traditional midwives, they hold a lot of wisdom, and there's a lot of people seeking that wisdom. So how do you really get in there?
Right.
It was me. So I started looking online as well. And like you said, it's scattered, it's everywhere. The first thing you find is CNM. Now, the barrier to being a CNM first of all, you need a bachelor's of science of some type, and then you need to go get your nursing degree, then you get a master's in midwifery, something of that nature. All in all, what I knew was I wasn't about to do that because I already have a bachelor's. And that creates so many other barriers of when you already have a bachelor's, you don't have access to funds to do another undergraduate degree, so many things, the timeline, some of the other factors that I'm sure y'all will learn about my story. But traditional midwifery wasn't quite the way for me. I didn't see a way in. Seeing them wasn't the way for me. I didn't see a way in. But I will say with that journey of you're looking for the answers or which one is the best fit for me, it seems like there's a divine element of finding the right thing, the right place at the right time, even if it doesn't feel like the right time for you. So I had said in my mind, I didn't have kids. I had this level of freedom in my life where going back to school made sense. But I think the Most High was like, no, not now. You will get it, but it won't come this easy. So lo and behold, I eventually came across the idea of CPMs, didn't fully understand it. I will call them CPAs. That's a tax people. Accountants. Tax people. I agree. So even when I came across it, I still had no information about it, but I got pregnant myself. I hired a CNM, then moved an hour and a half away. And she was like, well, that's outside of my work radius. We was already an hour away before I moved. So we decided to end that care, and I ended up partnering with the CPM. Thank you to the Most High. So she was able to give me more insight on the process of becoming a CPM, and she had a student who was into a school, so introduced me to that information. So that gave me more clarity of like, go this way. Now, to add to that, when I finally got to CPA, just kidding. I first got introduced to non-accredited schools. So that's a whole other thing.
Whole other topic.
So before I even go on, I also got introduced to you. We'll talk about that. Long story short, how Susanna and I became what we are. You know, that's my friend, that's my girl, that's my sister, you know, sister in midwifery journey as well. But I really just shot my shot in the DM, y'all. I was like, well, I see you're in midwifery school. Can we talk? Because I had an idea, but I needed someone to talk through these ideas with. So here we are. And at that time, you was in a traditional program, which also was me.
Yes.
That, oh, you're in MEEK. So let's talk about that transition.
Yes. Oh my goodness, y'all. And a shout out and kudos to the PEP students. More power to you. PEP is for sure interesting. It's not for everybody. I will say that in the previous years when I had to do...
In case they don't.
Yes, PEP is... Ooh, the acronym, I need to go back and look, forgive me y'all, but it's with pertaining, you're doing an asynchronous route and you're basically doing traditional midwifery. You're directly up under your preceptor. You're not in traditional MEEK accredited schools or any type of university. Perhaps you can do some of your own online learning through non-MEEK accredited programs. And for myself, I was at a non-MEEK accredited traditional program. They will walk through, you know, doing the asynchronous route with us, but there was no one-on-one with a professor. It was basically you are in charge of your own schooling, plus finding your preceptor, plus being able to submit all of your paperwork for NARM. It was a lot. It was very overwhelming, and I'm so grateful for shooting her shot and hitting it in the basket. Woo! And introducing me also more and enlightening me more to the MEEK accredited route. So yeah, PEP is very much so on your own, but it does work for some people, especially those that feel like they want to go at a better pace for themselves, something that's not a semesterly or every semester type thing, and making sure that they can be responsible for their learning. And for me and myself and Shiphrah too, MEEK accredited is the way to go because there's much more structure. They take financial aid, which a lot of PEP routes don't.
Okay. So all of the acronyms dealing with midwifery, let's know in the entry, can also like a foreign language. So to catch everybody up, the NARM is the exam that direct entry midwives take to be a licensed midwife. We use the term LN earlier, licensed midwife. You could be licensed in the direct path, meaning you didn't become a nurse and then a midwife, or you can be licensed in the nurse midwife path, meaning you was a nurse first and then a midwife. and they have their own accreditation organization as well as their own exam as well. It's not the norm. But for the purposes of this conversation, we will be talking about the norm because that's what I know about. What? Okay. Now, before we roll too far with all these acronyms, the path to choosing midwifery is hard enough, but then a lot of the language around it can be its own language as well. So a few things I say about that. PEP is portfolio evaluation process. You learn the themes, you get the experience, you compile it in a portfolio, so to speak, get it signed off by preceptors or mentors, and you send in that portfolio to be evaluated to say that I've accumulated the skills and experience to be able to sit for this exam to become a midwife. That exam is the norm. You take the norm, you pass it, you get licensed. Like if you're a nurse, you take the NCLEX. You're a lawyer, you take the bar. But that's for direct entry midwives. Direct entry means you go straight into midwifery education and practice to learn. You didn't become a nurse and practice that, and then become a midwife and practice that. Nurses have their own exam to pass. It's not the norm, but similar.
Mind you, with the licensure for some PEP students, some states require you also to do their licensure tests. So when you get into like LMs and CMs breakdowns, if you don't go directly for the norm as a PEP student, you can check your various state requirements and possibly become a licensed midwife, a licensed lay midwife, if you're like in Arkansas, stuff like that.
And even in some states, you see some people are CPM, LM. That means they took the norm to become a professional midwife, certified, but also they're licensed for their states as well. Some states do require extra exam. Some states may just require extra fee. Is Texas just an extra fee state, like if you're a CPM?
Fee and exam for licensure. It's not as extensive as the norm, but there is an exam.
So with that being said, we also talked about MEC accredited schools. So there are schools who can be an established school, who have an established curriculum, but they haven't gone to the organization to say that your curriculum meets these particular standards that we set as the baseline for education. And not that their education don't meet that, but they just haven't sought out to get that stamp of approval from MEC, MEAC, whatever. That being said, what's the importance of MEC accredited program? A, there is like the overarching umbrella standard for that education. B, some states also require you to have a degree from a school that has that accreditation before you go become a CPM and be a licensed in that state. An example of a state like that is Alabama, where you can't just do PEP or just do the experience and education and compile it in a portfolio. You have to go to a school, and this school has to be accredited. Also, Susanna mentioned going the MEC route, maybe more your speed for financial aid, but not every MEC school gets financial aid because that's a whole different federal or state accreditation to where they have those resources available to them. These are all things that went to our decision that led us to where we are today. But all that being said, all those acronyms, you don't have to remember them. Your stop number one is Midwifery Wisdom does offer a student handbook, and it has all the acronyms. It has a breakdown of the most common pathways to entry. It has all the things you want to know as a student. So if you don't know where to start at all, and if you had the same experience as us, is the internet is sending you to here, there, and everywhere, you can buy the book. Just buy the book.
Yeah.
It's a great book. I've read it front to back. It's a great book. And even though I've found the answers to a lot of those questions, I still will benefit from some of the answers in there, even at this part of my student journey. What you had, Susanna?
Especially because it gets overwhelming. You get a little bit of analysis paralysis. So instead of having to go through and dissect this and dissect that, already being able to get a comprehensive template that gives you a 1, 2, 3 is so much better than having to go deep dive to places you really don't know what you're looking for. So you can't really get the answers you're searching out. So, yeah.
That you don't know what you don't know. So even if you find something like, oh, yes, that's the answer, and you're going to run with it, which I think goes back to your journey into traditional midwifery. It was a answer to how to become a midwife, but not the answer. So I can appreciate about this handbook that you're not just getting a perspective from like, I'm a CPM, or I'm going that route, thus that's the right way. Let me tell you all about that. The handbook lays them all out. So that is a resource and a tool for you, but it just goes to show that if you don't know where to look, you could be all over the place just like us. That being said, I know that I get all the questions in my DM and people see me in real life of, I want to be a midwife. What do I start? Or what do I do? Or how's your program? How do you handle those situations or those questions from aspiring midwives?
Most definitely give them an overlay of a series of foundational questions, considering like, what is your why? I never want to deter anybody, but I want to give them a realistic perspective. If they're coming into birth work, starting straight into midwifery, I most definitely recommend becoming a doula first, so that they can get an outlook of like what birth work is actually like. Like, it's all fine and dandy until you get that call at 2 a.m. and you're sleeping good and you're like, I have a birth to go to, so just being able to have that concrete history and background within birth work, for sure recommend being a doula. And then leading into the midwifery journey, figuring out like their state licensure, to actually act and practice as a certified professional midwife is not legal in all states. You would be shocked, but it's not, or a certified professional midwife. So that would be the other thing, looking at their state licensure, their regulations, what would be realistic in terms of their pathway, and what is their end goal in midwifery that would allow them to see where they actually need to start. Some midwives would like to be in the hospital midwives. Some people would like to perform births outside of the hospital and do all their care and practice outside the hospital. So those two factors would indicate where you would need to start. And then from there, figuring out what route would best suit your life, depending on if it's PEP, if it's MEEP, if you're needing to get a preceptor that is in a different state. There's so many different factors, but dialing back down to like a 1, 2, 3 type thing, for sure, looking at your state licensure and jurisdictions for your scope of work, figuring out your why in birth work, and then figuring out your end goal as becoming a midwife and what you'd like to do with that. What are some key factors that you give, or pieces of advice that you give to people who are aspiring midwives also?
So I'll start with a story. I was on that part of my midwifery journey where I knew about CPM, I knew about CNM, maybe loosely, but again, I didn't even know what to ask. And opportunity came across my lap computer, whatever, to sign up for a mentorship program. It was like a Black midwives mentorship program. And you kind of lay out who you're looking for, what you hope to get out of this, and what you hope to exchange. So I was a doula at the time. So I had that birth experience, so bringing that. But I specified that I was looking for someone to help me narrow my path, and I did not get selected for that process or to be mentored at that time. I was like, wow, if I just had somebody to ask the questions to a long time ago, I could have been here. That being said, I will want to put in the air for aspiring midwives to do your due diligence, and don't expect everybody or anybody to just hold your hand through the whole process. You will get much further when you already know something and already have some level of foundation and decisiveness in place. So when I look back at that, I totally see why I was denied from that program. It is so many people needed to be pulled up in this industry, especially students, because we have to have preceptors or mentors. Mentors are much more likely to have constructive feedback for you if you have already laid a groundwork of like, I'm here, can you help me to the next stage, versus I have no groundwork to give me everything. That being said, it depends on how they ask the question. I am not a person for general questions. Ask me something critical. Ask me something to where my response can be more than one word. How was your program? It's good. What pathway are you taking? CPM. Instead, some people may ask, what were some of the deciding factors to me choosing my pathway to midwifery? Okay, that's a critical question. Let's talk about it. Well, first and foremost, my decision will not look anything like yours because it is a very personal decision. Some of those personal factors may include finances, personal and financial aid for school. Do you have a bachelor's degree? You have a bachelor's in science. You might want to go the nurse route. It's about the same time to get a master's than to get your CPM, which is about 2 to 3 years. Personal factors like, can you be on call right now? Well, maybe you need to do neither, or maybe you need to do just a didactic or school portion, and then plan the time for your kids to be in school, or you to be moving, or you to be someone be able to assist you, and then you do the clinical or hands-on training portion. You can do it that way. Like you said, the way that you wish to serve. You want to serve in the hospital, you have to be a CNM. You want to serve out of the home, you can be a CPM, but you also can be a CNM. What things are you passionate about? What's your birth story? Those things is foundational to how you want to serve and show up to other women. You may have said, oh, I had an induction at 42 weeks with a midwife, and that was just so important to me because if I did not birth by 42 weeks by my state's law, a midwife cannot birth my baby anymore. I would have had to go to the hospital. I would have had to get some type of medical induction there. Like all those nuances. Do you want to be able to do medical induction? Can't do that at the CPM. You can't do balloons. You can't do side attack, things of that nature. You have more medicinal scope of practice as a nurse rather than a strictly direct entry midwife. So many things. So like Susanna said, what's your why? What's your resources? Who's your support? What's your timeline? What's your educational background? All that being said, none of those things are about me. So asking me my story is relative, but I'm always just going to ask you a lot of questions in response.
And that's a great take to be able to say, because I think oftentimes when we're trying to pull out, as I guess you can consider us somewhat mentors now, the stage that we're in, because of the questions that we get so frequently. But yeah, we started where we started. Here we are.
Wait,
oh wow. And this is a thing, y'all. But for sure, being able to pull each other up is like we need something to be able to work with. We can't want it more than you, because we still have our own due diligence that we need to do in terms of schooling and finishing. But I think it shows some level of drive when you're able to present some facts, ask some questions, and then even follow up to say like, hey, this is how my journey is. Like being able to create a new community within midwifery, which is a whole other topic, I think would be essential for us as up and coming midwives in terms of being able to have collaboration over competition, because I feel like in that realm, we probably ourselves as up and coming midwives would have been able to hear more about the CPM route and being able to figure out who to go to figure out those questions and the organizations we should be involved in. And there's just so many things. And the culture of midwifery in each state, each city is also varying. So the same thing like Shiphrah said, consider those factors, resources, funding, your why, your support, and then also the potential that you may have to move for your preceptorship. So
itself right there.
It is.
So just to touch that really quickly, different schools and different states have different requirements of who you can train up under. Personally, when I started midwifery school, I was in the state of Georgia, where it is illegal, not recognized. You can't get a license to be a midwife there. The particular school that I have chosen also does not recognize you training under any midwives in that state, even if they've been licensed in a licensed state. So I chose to move to a state that does recognize the license. And girl, we're going to leave that for another time, that whole story. Yeah, I'll leave that there.
All in all, I think it's really great in terms of the uprising, if for lack of better words, to see amongst our community of system midwives, considering that there's only 2% Black midwives in the United States. And then seeing the other tragic statistics that we are 3 to 4 times more likely to die opposed to our white counterparts. I think it's very imperative that regardless of pathway per se, we can be able to highlight the profession of midwifery in our individual scopes and backgrounds and in experiences, so that we can be able to push forward to a new culture of making sure that our maternal mortality rate is not as high, and that we can have the birth experiences that we are given as, that we should be given as a necessity rather than some type of luxury. So.
And you hit on a point of no matter our entry, it is the service and care that we're hoping to bring to our community that is really going to make the difference. So for someone who's not quite ready to make that jump into whatever entry of midwifery, you mentioned doing some doula work. Are there some other things that you would suggest someone doing in their waiting period of making that decision?
Yes, education. When I tell you, We have been gifted with the internet that has so many resources. I would say look at various things in terms of like classes that you can take, like spinning babies, being able to do the midwifery wisdom conferences that you can be able to connect with other midwives, doing some of your own research about various ways you can help as an up and coming midwife, other birth work endeavors that you may want to consider. There's so many things just to know what you don't know. They may ignite another fire in you to perhaps become a lactation consultant, or being able to do breastfeeding courses or childbirth education courses with families, because the world of birth work is so vast and there's so many different categories. For sure, being able to just research all that you can, learn the difference between frontal waters and hind waters, just various topics so that you can have something to bring to the conversation to be able to speak with a midwife about. And perhaps from that conversation, you may be able to develop a student apprenticeship for that future preceptorship. What about you? Any suggestions?
Yes. So organically connect with people, as she said, because no matter what path, maybe a little different for nursing, so I won't say that. But if you're going to be a CPM, you do need a mentor or what's called a preceptor in this industry. So if you do decide to go this route, you don't want to be slowed down by the fact that you have no one to learn up under. So be in the industry in whatever capacity makes sense for you, attending births, attending training work, attending workshops. Also, education, yes, but I would make mine a little bit more structured to count for what I'm gonna need in midwifery school. So I would get my certification for CPR and basic life support, because those are required in pretty much any school setting, any birth you work at. Even if you decide to be like a birth assistant, you need those types of certification. That being said, maybe you don't want to be a midwife. Consider that. Maybe you just want to do birth work. Do you want to just be a doula? Do you just want to be a birth assistant? Do you just want to be a lactation consultant? Do you just want to be a massage therapist that has a focus on prenatal care? Do you want to be a postpartum doula? There's so many different ways that you can connect to this industry without going the full length of being a midwife. So consider that. So in addition to certifications for CPR and BLS, get your NRP, so that's neonatal resuscitation. Get a doula training and or certification as well. Take a breastfeeding class and or certification as well. Usually those are required for school. If you plan to go to school within the next 2 to 3 years, they will still count at that time. Yes, go to some births. Attend some births. Get on call. Know what it feels like to get them calls, no matter what you're doing, where you at, who you with. Know what it feels like to have to drop everything that's personal important to you to go take care of what's personal important to someone else. You need that experience. That could change your whole perspective. Maybe that'll let you know, well, I do want to be a midwife, but not at home. I want to go work in a hospital where there's shifts. I don't get on call. I am on duty for my 12 or 24, whatever hours, but when I'm off, I'm off. Do I like the hospital culture? Yeah. And that kind of help you decide too. So attend to births in and out of the hospital, because that could be different. So I would get all those certifications. I would attend births, and I would take classes that would count towards the midwifery degree. If you don't have core classes like math, science, English, those things, I will be taking those, if not in just one semester, just slowly as I can or as I can afford it. So when you jump into school, you jump straight into midwifery and not how to write an English paper.
Okay.
That's me.
And I do agree with Shiphrah, because a lot of those things you can be able to be proactive and prudent on your journey, and then save yourself some time, some hassle, and possibly some money if you don't have to retake those courses. And one follow-up thing I would say, in addition to all of those things, which are great, learn some debriefing methods and self-care methods that you can take into the birth work space, because it's not easy being able to support everyone, their families, the birth stories. It can be tedious, taxing, and hard on yourself, your mental, and your body. So that's one thing I would say to add in to the pot. Get some self-care in there. Let's sprinkle some of that there.
Mental, physical, spiritual, financial, all those things need to have some level of balance. Well, you'll be most successful with that. That being said, if you wait to get all your ducks in a row, you're probably never going to cross the road. So there's many stories we could tell of I started not really knowing how this was going to work out, but it has worked out. So that's the balance there. But at minimum, having the self-care that Susanna is talking about is just having the mental and spiritual fortitude to still endure when those things do fall apart. So yes, try to get it together. But when you do face trials with your family, with your finances, with your education, etc., that you have some tools in place to support your mental health. Burnout is real, and it's a very real thing in birth work in general, where a lot of people do not last long in this career because they don't have those means of supporting themselves through this work. And look, we can't go midwife everyone or be with woman for everyone else and not be with yourself. So develop those habits now. Like, this is the worst time to have poor mental health or poor physical health. Like, we got so much of important things to do as midwives and then learning midwives for you should not support your own health.
I love it. I love it. And for my closing statement, I think that we should most definitely see if there's any conversations that anyone is interested in us to cover in terms of topics, and being able to enlighten them on our journey and our future topics and experiences. Yeah, y'all can make sure to follow us on our platforms on Instagram. I am at studentmidwife.sai. That's student midwife Sai. And Shiphrah.
Yes, likewise. I would love to hear the conversations that you want to hear continued. We happen to be the voices, but the stories and the true importance of this entire conversation really comes from you all. So we would love your feedback. That being said, you can find me directly on socials as well, Instagram, Facebook, and all the things at Becoming Midwife Shiphrah. I look forward to connecting with you.
Peace.